Also joining us is Mr. Sudhir Mishra. He's a managing partner of Trust Legal. He does a BW Legal World show called the Sudhir Mishra Show, and is a very active member of the legal fraternity. This session is about talent. This session is about hiring. This session is about winning the talent war, so to say. And the pandemic has made sure that work from home, work from anywhere has shown up its opportunities and its challenges. Opportunities being you can hire from anywhere, even talent that wants to be in a smaller city because they want to look after their parents, or it is more cost effective to work from their city. It has also made sure that technology is becoming more and more important. Also from practice areas in the last 2 years, things like crypto, NFT, gaming, the number of mergers and acquisitions in the tech space, the IPOs, all has hottened up. And initially, let me also categorize it into three parts: large law firms, mid-sized law firms, and young small law firms. Now, the challenges of all these three in terms of talent are different. Let me invite each of the panelists to make their opening comments. So, Ms. Paridhi, Adani, I would request you to give your perspective on what is happening in terms of recruiting and retaining talent, because a lot of good partners or professionals want to be law firm owners. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want to start their law firms. So how do you retain talent? What has been your approach in terms of recruitment and retaining talent? We would love to know.
Thank you very much. That's a great and a loaded question. And I actually had the pleasure of listening to some of the comments that were made in the previous session also. And I think some of these issues cut across the entire talent pool. So, it's an exciting time and a stressful time both to be a lawyer. I think, the world has evolved so much. And, I think in the last 2 years, we've seen the sort of disruption that is possible and that was sort of waiting to be unleashed in the legal world. And I think a lot of that affected how talent is brought into the I mean, I can speak mostly for the law firm environment, so I'll sort of limit my comments to that. But I think, as you rightly said, that sort of there have been an opening up of opportunities as to where we can hire, who we hire, how we engage with them, how the nature of the social contract, vis-a-vis, the institution and the individual has changed. Having said that, I think the last 2 years have also been very, very difficult for the country. And I think with, last year's second wave, which was debilitating and, sort of stressful for many people, I think it forced a lot of rethinking in a lot of people, both in terms of why are they here, what are they doing with their lives, and how do they want to sort of continue going forward. So we have to balance the fact that there's an opening up of an opportunity where typically talent who would have never sort of been applying to sort of tier 1, tier 2 firms have now found themselves to be able to get this opportunity. And at the same time, there's an entire movement on the great resignation that's happening, where talent that has been part of the ecosystem has sort of reevaluated its choices. I think for us as an institution, we've experienced both sides. And I think over the last couple of years, even pre-pandemic, there was a shifting trend in terms of sort of the use of technology, the evolving nature of the kind of lawyer that we're hiring, and the kind of lawyer that the clients expect to engage with. We're talking about a more wholesome kind of lawyer, where what we call a delta lawyer, where there's a sort of business acumen is expected, deep understanding of issues such as technology, science, human behavior. I think you're expected to role model a lot of aspects like emotional intelligence. So what we say is the rise of AI as well as EI. And I think for us, I think as you hire, it's not just about adding headcount, it's about adding quality, it's about adding value systems into the organization. And I think we're looking for, sort of committed talent, and talent that's differentiated, innovative, sort of risk taking, and at the same time is able to be truly human. So I think, at least for us, we do believe that, sort of bringing your emotional self into the organization is also important. And I think that trend we've seen open up in the last, maybe 4 to 5 years. Um, Technology is playing its part, but I think, the human lawyers are still here to stay for some time.
I like the term the Delta lawyer, who's human, who has a whole well-rounded personality, has EQ, IQ, understands business, has business acumen. You use the term. I will come to the hiring strategies for 2022. Dr. Manoj Kumar, who's founder and managing partner of Hammurabi, has also joined us. Dr. Manoj Kumar, Mr. Sudhir Mishra is also here. I'll bring you in first, Mr. Manoj Kumar, and then I'll bring Mr. Sudhir Mishra in. Your opening comments on what you are doing to now. Is there a different approach firms are using to hire talent at the firm? What are your ways of hiring? Do you use a headhunter? Do you use a LinkedIn? Do you use a bit of referrals? Is there an employee referral program? Also, again, in your firm, your partners have been with you for, both your partners have been with you for a decade. What makes sure that you are able to retain them in a environment where there are so much opportunities, entrepreneurial and in other firms? So what are you doing to retain talent in 2022?
Good morning, Dr. Batra. Good morning, Geeta ma'am. Good morning, Paridhi. Good morning, everybody who's hearing me. So I'm a night watchman. I've just been asked to fill in. I just got a message 5 minutes back that I have a panel at 12:45, but Dr. Batra got me in. So I'll give you very non-formatted thoughts. My first thought is that in last almost 7 years, not a single hiring has happened through any recommendation, any referral, any recruitment agency. It has only happened when people have written to me on LinkedIn. And they have continued writing to me, and I have continued talking to them from India, from abroad. In fact, I remember before the COVID wave happened, which Paridhi talked about, I was in US and I was doing a mediation, and I hired 2 people over a chat, which was like, I never met them, I never knew them, and they both stayed with the firm. What I love is interacting. I believe in what Mahatma Gandhi used to do, and I'm just saying it. Geeta ma'am knows my relationship with UPSC and my studies. So Gandhi used to say, you have to remember and interact and meet as many people as you can. There was no LinkedIn, there was no Facebook at that time. So Gandhi used to travel in the third class across the country in these passenger trains. And you will remember that 1914, he crossed a particular railway station. He said, Ramlal, tumhari shadi ho gayi. And after 4 years, he will cross that place and he said, tumhare bacche hue. After 5 years, he will cross the same station. He will say, kis class mein Ramlal wo bacche padh rahe hain? That's how he remembered lakhs and lakhs of names. So I somehow love interacting with people. If I'm sitting in a flight, I trouble the guy who's sitting next to me. If I'm sitting in a bus, I trouble the guy next to me. And thankfully with LinkedIn, that appetite is even growing. So most of the people have come from there. Much before LinkedIn, the people who have come, they have stayed because we have a very novel kind of existence. They can come and say anything to me. I can ask anything to them. My accounts, my profitability, my balance sheets, they all are in public domain. In fact, I don't know my passwords. So it's a very different kind of system I operate with. Yesterday, we had a lawyer who was a UPSC dropout. She was very different at the time when she joined. She completed 2 years and we had organized a lunch, and the lunch, Dr. Batra knows that I plan my food right from the morning when I get up, because that's the only thing which motivates me. So I planned the lunch, and after the lunch, I took her for a 4-kilometer walk in the evening. And she said, is this the way we will celebrate? So we went to Sundar Nursery and we walked for 4 kilometers. So it's very informal, very engaging, very heart to heart. We are 20 lawyers. We are a very cottage industry kind of thing. My hiring is very, very emotional, very personal.
Okay, Mr. Mishra, yes, personal touch and mentoring individuals personally matters. And yes, in a world where there is more money, there's more glory, I think, in my view, personal relationships with the people you're familiar with and you build on their strengths does create winning outputs. Dr. Kumar is here, Ms. Geeta Luthra is here. I'll bring both of them in first. Dr. Kumar, what are your hiring strategies in 2022? What is your retaining strategy in 2022? And what has changed about hiring and retaining in 2022?
Thanks, Annurag. I dropped off a few times. Regrets for that. Uh, I'll try and answer it part by part. The hiring strategies first. I think after the pandemic, certain things have changed very drastically. Uh, issues like remote working, remote recruitment, the entire a big chunk of law practice being done remotely, and I think these are things that are here to stay. Therefore, one big takeaway for, especially for the legal profession, is to discount issues of personal and physical presence, to actually look for talent and focus on talent and not really the location, and geography is not going to be an issue anymore. That has its own consequences on mobility, and therefore that brings us to the next question of retention. One big lesson here for us is that uh, internal HR policies of organizations, especially law firms, have to cater to the candidate, to the team. It has to be team centric. Recognition strategies have to become far more clearer and lucid and easy to understand and follow. Growth strategies within the organizations have to come out more clearly. Traditionally, law practice, barring a few examples, has not been a very a clear and transparent area for people who join law firms or chambers. Uh, it, it, the perception has been that growth in law practice is very subjective. Recognition is very subjective. I think that has to go. For us, for example, we've completely reworked our HR side of the firm, focusing on talent, focusing on internal growth, and retention being the key. Between even interdepartmental or inter-practice areas, people want to move from one practice area to another, people wanting to move geographically. The effort is to always recognize and retain the talent. The other side that I want to touch is soft skills are becoming very important in remote working. Face-to-face physical working with a client or a court or an institution is totally different from the kind of skill sets you require when you are when you're interacting through a screen. And therefore a lot of training and then counseling is required, which I'm sure a lot of organizations are already undertaking. We, for one, are surely doing. So those are my initial thoughts. Be glad to add.
Commonality between what you and Ms. Adani said is about the well-rounded personality. She called it a Delta lawyer. She talked about EQ. So clearly, personality in every profession is important. And I think with the, as you rightly said, with the Zoom meetings, uh, your presence matters, and hence compassion and a certain kind of presence matters. I would like to ask both you and Ms. Adani about what are the top 3 things a young lawyer looks at while staying back in a company. I want to ask about remuneration. How has remuneration changed in the last 2 years? How are you building new practices? And what is the kind of lateral hiring you're doing for that? So these are things I'll come back to you so that you have time to think about it. And I'll also bring in Ashima. She also has a perspective on these things. But first, let me bring in Ms. Geeta Luthra. Ms. Geeta Luthra, again, while we saw a disruption 21 months back, in the last 21 months, we all have adjusted to the new normal or the new abnormal. Uh, and we have actually bounced back in a very fast, resilient, and in a better way. We've got used to working through Zoom. I think we are able to do much more work because while we are, used to our face-to-face interactions, and sometimes they deliver much more. What do you think has changed about hiring in 2022? Have you hired people by just interacting with them on the Zoom, or you still insist that you meet a person, him or her, before you hire him or her?
So much as I would love to continue traveling with Sudhir in the plane and chatting with him on the plane, this is not happening these days, because basically, in fact, I'm just doing everything virtually. And so all hiring is happening virtually. And sometimes you don't get the same amount of interaction, you don't get the same sense of depth. Maybe you go a lot more by the CV than you go by how you are interactively, and later maybe you realize it wasn't the best choice. Sometimes you realize it was probably a better choice than I would have done if I'd done it physically. So I think it's all said and done. It has its pluses, it has its minuses. We can't, of course, be Gandhiji. I love the example that Sudhir gave, and I'm sure you have to draw out of that, because this is one aspect that you see in India, the extent of interaction when we can do physically, if we choose to do so, which we sometimes try to ignore or be in our own little shell, and that's not really good. Now, what would I look at in hiring? Obviously, you want people who are savvy, particularly people who can help me when I want to log in, who can help me when I want to go do all the things which I feel I'm challenged. And I sometimes say, okay, this much I learned, but I don't want to get into all that lafla of learning further. I can always ask my colleagues to help me out. So in a law firm is essentially different from a senior counsel. We do need our associates around physically, and sometimes we are so handicapped when we don't have them. Even if we are doing it on the net. Of course, conduct has to be that much more impeccable. So we have to see how we behave, how we interact in a courtroom. It cannot be casual because you're caught out at once. It tends to be less friendly in its own way because, you are in the public eye even more. One was in the public eye when there were 40, 50 lawyers and, litigants in the courtroom or law officers. One is being there for every journalist on a click to be able to see. And so you think,
absolutely,
your behavior has to be more appropriate. And one of the thoughts that came to my mind was this, that, when these doctors do their surgeries, they tend to be very flippant because they are dealing with human lives. And if they take the tension on their heads all the time, it can take off from the dispassionate conduct that they need to have when they are doing a surgery. So sometimes if in a court of law we are flippant, it doesn't mean we are being flippant, but the common man who's watching doesn't realize that. So we have to, cross our T's and dot our I's very carefully. And I think that's what is one person, and I think it's equally true for the judges. So I love this quote which Justice Meera said, that, in a court of law, it's not the lawyers who are on trial, it's not the parties, they both know the truth. It's the judge who is on trial. So all of us are on trial when we are on VCs. And when we hire, we have to keep that in mind. that we are all on trial and on test. Something which you may get by on your reputation, you may not when you are on a VC, because you are being tested by that many strangers, and the court will also look at you.
So those qualities are very important in professionals. Adding on those qualities and I'll bring in Ashima into the conversation. But as I said, I want to talk about remuneration, induction. As you made a very important point, that the lawyers have to be physical also, so that they can observe, learn. See, induction also happened by having people around you, right, Dr. Kumar and Paridhi. But now you're not physically around. So how do you learn? But before that, let me get Ashima for the next set of questions. Ashima, what do you think? Let me ask you, what do you think has changed in terms of hiring? And what is likely to change as we go forward? And what is likely to become a permanent trend? And what is, only contextual or transitory?
Thank you, Dr. Batra. I think from our interactions with various lawyers, law firms, and in-house departments, we've seen an increased change in the kind of lawyers who are joining, who are not just lawyers, are also social media influencers. They're also people who help these firms maintain their knowledge teams, their communications teams. So the avenues for lawyers have grown a lot, and I think legal content writing, all of these things have come about in the years, in the recent years. And I would actually pose this question to our panelists and ask them, how are they dealing with some of these new era trends which are about maintaining the firm to public connect, to making law more accessible through their websites, their conversations, through their writings, their articles. And this needs a battery of people as well. This is not something that happens on its own. So coming to Paridhi, your thoughts on this, if you could help us out no more.
No, thank you for that. And, just quickly before I respond to you, I just want to sort of respond to Geeta ma'am's comments as well. I think, it's important that, for a profession like ours, which is largely built on the whole apprenticeship model, where, we sort of look and observe and you learn by osmosis. I don't think anybody has yet found a solution for not being around and not learning, in a non-physical way. So at least what we're doing right now is what we call the young ones. I think we would still encourage them to spend more time in the office. For a lot of people, they would not have even experienced a corporate, environment or a physical office environment. So, learning how to conduct themselves, learning what a professional dress code is, your mannerisms, all of that gets developed by observing your seniors. And we do believe that that's an important aspect, especially in the early years. So we do encourage people to come back to the office. But as you grow in your career, I think, as someone mentioned, that location becomes less relevant. It's important, but, you have to find different ways to contribute. What we're also doing now is, I think, given how the world is evolving, it's not just a sort of one-way thing where we ask, sort of our lawyers to, bring their best self. You also have to create a platform. You also have to support them in their learning and training. So, and I know a lot of other firms are doing this, but I can speak for ourselves to say that we're investing a lot in that journey. We're investing in what we call our Leadership Academy, where we want to build a next pipeline of leaders who are lawyers. So they would be thought leaders in their subject. They would be known for, sort of the sort of personal effectiveness skills that we're talking about, the most empathetic lawyers, innovative, etc. And for that, I think we need to build an ecosystem of learning, as well as a little bit of having that beginner's mindset. So that culture needs to be brought into the organization, that you constantly question, you disrupt, you learn, you have, I think lawyers also need to learn a little bit how to teach, because the only time otherwise you experience that is actually in a law school. So we do encourage, senior members of the firm to actually spend time mentoring, sort of mentoring people. And it's not an easy time to be a lawyer because you have to practice the law and then you have to do all of these other things as well. But I think it is bringing a lot of wholesomeness and purpose to the profession, and we are seeing that change in the talent. Mr. Batra, you asked a question on remuneration. All of this also sort of has its own impact on remuneration also. And I think generally, as the country is growing and as, sort of India gets more aspirational and more ambitious, I think, this is sort of a natural consequence. I think the sort of cost factor has, of course, gone up, and we do believe that now remuneration needs to be more merit-based. That's a change we have also gone through. But the definition of merit is also changing. I think just being only an excellent technician is not the only parameter on which sort of everyone is assessed.
Yeah.
So I think there's a whole set of other factors that need to go in for remuneration. As a result of that, how do you assess people? How do you recognize talent? How do you develop that talent and train them? But we do believe that remuneration is something that's important for people, especially given that we're fortunate as a profession to still have this profession. COVID took a lot of that away, and so we want to underscore that this is not something that we shouldn't just pretend to say this is not an issue at all.
So I also want to bring in this, since you're a woman, you're a mother, and I'm sensitive to that. And, in some way, COVID for a lot of working women increased the workload, because women will always look after families. It doesn't matter how wealthy they are, how much support they have, they will always want to look after their child, so on. Now, one of the senior general counsel listening to this conversation has texted me on WhatsApp a comment, and I want reaction of Dr. Kumar first, and then you, Paridhi, because the biggest problem after COVID is some employees, especially women, are reluctant to join physical office at space and prefer to operate virtually. Whereas the physical presence is indeed important and makes a qualitative difference. And others is when they've been asked to come to office, even with flexibility, a few good hands have resigned. So how do you deal with that? Dr. Kumar, Mr. Mishra, but first Paridhi, because since you are a woman yourself, how does a firm or a corporate in-house legal department deal with this issue?
So maybe I'll take my own personal experience as I talk about this. I have done both working from home as well as working from the office in both the times that I was on maternity. So I have two young girls, and I would definitely say that for me as a personal choice, I would have much preferred to be in the office environment. I think Indian society is still not fully geared up to the fact that, women working from home, and especially in a career like ours, I don't think we have the right infrastructure. So I found it more distracting. I found it doesn't matter whether the hours were long in office or at home. Those are not the things that bothered me. It's just the sense of professionalism and the work environment. I found it a little bit more structured, obviously, in the workplace. I also have a very supportive team. I have a very supportive, client base. So that gave me that, that flexibility to do it. That's probably not the same experience for most women. So, I think organizations need to learn how to sort of bring back people who've come back, post maternity. And I think this is a challenge that is being faced globally. It's not just India. It's not just the Indian legal profession. I don't think we know what to do. I don't think most of us even know what a child needs at the age of 6 months or 8 months and what the mother is expected to do. So it's not just about timings.
Okay, Dr. Kumar and then Mr. Mishra. Dr. Kumar, your comment on remuneration, and then a lot of people opting out because they've now been asked to come to office.
Yes. So I think one thing very clear to understand for all of us is that, we are in a sort of a transition, because we didn't know what implications COVID would bring 2 years ago. And we are learning to cope with it. And our systems were never geared up, including the working processes and working styles of us as lawyers, including senior counsels and judges and courts. So everything was on a physical format. Therefore, that is what appears to be the logical fit, that, change is not never so easy. Having said that, as a law firm, when we have to talk about lawyers and team members and retention, and especially the younger generation, we have to look at all the three factors. One, the challenges of the law firm. Two, client expectations. And three, of course, the wish list of the young lawyers, the young talent, and the growing talent. When all the three have to merge, we have to find common ground. And therefore, when we talk about retention, we have to talk about the priorities that the firm has at the moment, is to be more client-centric than ever before. Have deeper client relationships with existing clients, work on a very consistent quality marketing outreach for new opportunities amongst clients and new opportunities amongst new practice areas, and of course, legal tech, which is the reality. Whether COVID or not, we were already moving at a very fast pace on technology-driven working style. COVID kind of just accelerated it, suddenly brought us to the station much faster.
Okay.
So whether we like it or not, or whether our wish list is answered or not, I think remote working is here to stay. So when we have to merge the other aspect of young talent into the priorities of the firm, unless we merge both their expectations and the firm's growth, the winning formula will never come. So we as a firm, our experience has been that retention is not entirely defined by remuneration itself. I think the internal growing talent and the young members are looking at very clear and lucid and transparent policies and structures which can define, and they can foresee clear growth opportunities, foresee recognitions, see themselves having deeper buy-in into organizations in very clear and defined timelines, including growth into the partnership of the firm and similar other opportunities. So that's my broad take, that we're all learning and everybody is learning, and remote working is here to stay. And with all the challenges, including us, we have worked physically for quarter of a century. I've worked physically, so it's never easy. And having a colleague across the table helping me with with all the material required compared to working on a Zoom and doing the same work is entirely different. But for the young talent, I've personally experienced their work and output has increased tremendously. The quality of the output in this entire 2 years period. So we are still to see and find the common ground on people missing out or opting out or resigning because of not wanting to come to office. I think different people have different challenges. So there could be
you got to be very sensitive and give them
sensitive.
Every person is unique.
Every person is unique.
Any
exactly.
business, in any business.
I've lost.
Yeah,
we
go
have
ahead.
lost so many lady colleagues over the years because of challenges that they had come across in their personal lives, which they could not continue the practice because they could not physically come to office. And
possibly that can be solved now.
Working. Yes.
Possibly that can be so. That's another positive development.
Other side of it. Exactly.
Mr. Mishra, your comments, and I'll hand it back to Ashima to wrap up the panel post that.
In my office, 80% people are from the opposite side. They are women. And
so why do you call it opposite side?
Opposite side, I say, because there's always opposition to me on many issues nowadays in office. So I say opposite side. The point is that it's a very regular thing for us now to see. Our office never closed and they all came. In fact, one of my partner got married and I asked her to at least come after 3 weeks. She landed up in 2 weeks only. So somehow we were more comfortable in office, and it is a little spread out also. It was easy. It's a small firm. I know for a bigger firm, it's a real challenge to have a large office open, which has centralized AC or something like that. But because of our oxygen bench matters and during the second wave, representing many hospitals in Delhi, and also the TD set practice, because you have so much of filing going on, and they all were emergency injunctions and all the restraining thing against broadcasting company. The court was live all through the pandemic. Our office was mostly open. Ashima, on the remuneration front, both my partners, we are three of us, we don't have a document. The only thing which I know that we never discuss money, and somehow it is going on like that, that whatever comes we share, and we are moving very nicely along that. Somehow it's very unorganized and organic. So it's going on like that. In fact, when we started doing documentation for associates, senior associates and others, they one day say कि हमारा तो कोई कागज भी नहीं है साहब. तो उस दिन मुझे लगा कि we never actually went to that route, and it was a very different kind of a structure. But I don't know how long will be like that, because all said and done, we have been, despite our trying to be very small, we are now getting into bigger things, and slowly I have to structure it, and it has to come out of its comfort zone. So I know, but I'm very happy. I don't have a feeling that, I always feel that they do more than me. Women lawyers in my office do always more than me. I have to always do the catch-up game, maybe also because of my age.
Not at all, Mr. Mishra. I haven't known a much younger at heart person. So many lawyers we meet, your social media interactions and fan following is a testament to that. So thank you so much, panelists, for joining us today with your wonderful thoughts and insights, and also extending time on this panel. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to have you.